All right, so we finally made it back into the shop with the car. So obviously it was wet. It was cold out. You could see from the first video. So we got a little bit of a late start, but it really didn't affect us that much. It ended up, everything went smoothly until really just like a couple little things here and there. The differential bushings took a little bit to figure out, which we found a really good way to do that. And then we had some issues with the parking brake cables, but I'll go over that later. So I got this sped up twice as fast as the normal time lapse. So we put the tires back on there to help compress the springs so we could take the strut nuts off without needing to compress the springs just to take the nut off. But yeah, I don't know. I was really surprised with how fast everything went. These springs were kind of annoying because they weren't made for, I think they were made for like a Camaro or something. So it gives a little bit lower ride height, a little bit different spring rate, which was the point of putting them on. But they had to be clocked a certain way, and whatever crappy picture came with them wasn't 100%. But we figured it out. Got him on there. Chris had to leave because it started snowing and getting nasty, and he lives 30, 40 minutes away. So me and Don just took over, decided that it was better for us to help each other on the front and then help each other on the back. And like I said, you can see us fighting here with the differential bushings. But we luckily have enough tools in the shop to figure out a good way to get it done. Just took a little bit of time. So Don's putting in the new bushings here, and then you can see the J-pipes over in the bottom right corner. It's getting ready to slow down here in a minute, but that's all right. I got a little update here I did live, and I'll let you get at it. All right, we got new bushings in the rear diff. 1, 2, 3 new seals. What else did we get done? We got the new struts in. We're gonna probably do something with the brakes. We got everything apart here. Pads are pretty old. They still have like pad material left, but they're not in the greatest condition. So cleaned up the slides, which are these. You can see them kind of shiny. The pads, these notches here in the pads go right here. So we'll grease all that up with the new pads, re-grease the pins, wipe them off, re-grease them. Do that on both sides. Turn the rotors, reassemble the front, and then in the rear, we're gonna change this bar because it's bent. Do we have a new bolt for that?
We got duplicates. We'll steal one off the old one.
Okay. Dude, that's a ball joint too.
Yeah.
Wow. Or a ball and socket joint. You got a zip tie or another option for this?
I'm gonna mess with that tomorrow. I've got the tool to actually do those clamps.
Nice.
So I'll bring that over. That one looks salvageable, to be honest.
Did you already put the parking brakes in?
Just on that side.
Oh, I see. Nice.
You see they did the aluminum on, it's aluminum instead of plastic on the new one.
This part?
This part. So the part that didn't want to come out, we had to cut them apart. We actually had to cut the...
Oh, you did?
Yeah. They wouldn't release, and it was plastic, so
it was just destroying,
coming apart. It was just disintegrating.
Nice.
So we cut those apart since there's nothing special about those knuckles, And yeah, the aluminum ones on the new parking brake came right out.
Yeah, that's not surprising. It's good. Now it seems nice and straight. So Don's got the differential that was in this one is now way over there in the corner. And we took the differential out of Chris's car and we're putting it back into this one. That way Chris has a stock gear ratio. What is it? 290?
292s.
292. And the one that came out of here was a 327?
327.
Yeah. So luckily I had this table here and we just lowered the car kind of onto the table and then we dropped out all 4 bolts out of that cradle and then just basically raised the car up and the cradle stayed right there. Oh, we got the whole exhaust out too. We did that first. And then we got the new exhaust. It's a catback system. And it's over here on the floor. It's got these weird J-pipe thingies that looks like a muffler bypass, but it's not. It collects the sound and dampens it. So I'm kind of excited to see what that sounds like. And then this was a electronic parking brake that was on this cradle, so we pulled that off. We'll put on the wheel speed sensor harness. We're swapping those out because they're a little bit different. This is the wheel speed sensor here, and so you got to unbolt that, and then you have this clip which plugs into this harness over here. But the new one has just this one clip, and it would clip directly into the wheel speed sensor. So, did you already swap that out?
No, I pulled the old one, so I haven't.
The old one was in there.
Yeah.
But we'll get back at it tomorrow. So we'll keep working the differential. The seals had to get RTV'd back in because on the inside there were some pretty ugly burrs that somebody, I guess, made whenever they were getting the old seals out, because again, this thing wasn't a rear end collision. But we worked through it, kind of used some emery cloth, sanded them down. We still used RTV to get them back in, but it's all right. They don't leak. It's been a few weeks now, no leaks. Car's doing great. But yeah, that table came in handy for doing this job. And I wish it was as easy as it looked to get that cradle back on there. It was not. But I mean, here we are getting the differential in. Everything went together pretty smooth. We only had a couple other hiccups, which I think I talk about later, with the brakes. And here I am doing the sway bar mount modification that we had to do. Turned out pretty good, I will say. Went little above and beyond. I used a wire brush, cleaned it off, and painted it. I don't think it will ever last, but at least when I was done with it, it looked pretty good. It was nice to break out the welder and be able to keep the project moving, rather than have to go try to source a whole new control arm or use a part that was bent, which we didn't want to do, going through all this and then have something that's kind of half-assed. But you can see, it looks kind of funny sitting there drying. But we're about to split up here. I'm going to work on the front. Chris and Don are going to finish up the back, but I'll give you another update here, and we'll keep rocking. All right, updating. So we had to cut, this is the sway bar sway bar link mount on the lower control arm, and we had to cut it off of this control arm that came with this cradle, because this cradle was in an accident. You can see they already replaced the upper control arm. This one had a little bend to it. It's not really noticeable down here, but it's definitely tweaked up there. Probably would have been okay, but it'll be better this way. It'll be easier on the bushings. So we took his old lower control arm off of the old cradle that came out. We cut this bracket off because you can see that the sway bar mount was just a single shear mount, and with this sway bar being bigger, it transmits more force, so it needs to be double shear. So that's why we had to swap them, cut them, weld them, and now it fits up there nice and good. What else? We got these bolts loosely mounted. We're going to, so he's coming with, we still got I guess the paint's dry on that. We can put that one in now. So we can put that one in, and then he's got another arm for this side that goes from here to here because, like I said, it was in a wreck and it's bent. So we're gonna change that one out. We probably could have pulled that off the old one, but now he's got one new bushing, not two. So that'll be good. You can see this one's nice and straight. We got the wheel speed sensor harness swapped over. We got the wheel speed sensor swapped over. Everything goes in pretty nice. So the trick for these bushings in here, when you go to take them out, we'll go to this, but we did some of it, we did all of it yesterday, but when we do this one, for those of you guys that are going to be doing this ever, the trick is, so this outer part here is aluminum, and usually they're steel, and usually you can take an air hammer or something and just hammer this edge, and it'll push the whole, this whole ring here, it'll push it out the other side. But for these, the best thing to do, hey little girl, the best thing to do is just use a hole saw on a drill through your bushing. If you don't make it all the way through and your hole saw bottoms out, get a Sawzall, cut the bushing out, and then once the bushing's out, you have just this ring, and then you can cut relief cut with your Sawzall through this edge here, and then use your air hammer or chisel or whatever you got, punch, and then it comes out pretty easy once you have that relief cut, because it has somewhere to get smaller. It has room to get smaller, so then it can come out. And then as far as swapping the seals out, we just found something that was about the right diameter, tapped them in. But yep, plan is to, oh hey little buddy, we're gonna put this one back together the rest of the way, put it in here. We've already got the springs and struts mounted, or springs and chocks mounted back in here. Get this back up, get the drive shaft back on, put your heat shields back on, put the new exhaust on, and then we'll lower it down, finish up the front, and then put the wheels back on, drop it down onto some blocks, and then we are going to do a pseudo alignment as best we can with some strings. That way he can drive it to the alignment shop without wasting his decent tires, and we'll keep working. So we're back. Chris went out, got his rotors turned, all four of his original rotors, and that ended up causing an issue, which I'll get to in a second. But right now, I'm putting together the front brakes. They're putting together the last bit of pieces on the rear subframe, and we're getting ready to plug this subframe up into the Caprice. So the rotors, apparently for the parking brake drum, is a little bit different from Camaro to Caprice. Ended up grinding the inside of Chris's rotors out and just to get them to fit over the parking brake shoes because the shoes wouldn't adjust down enough. And we also had a tough time with the parking brake cables, which caused another issue, being that took it to the alignment shop after all this was done. Everything was fine. They couldn't get it aligned. They aligned it, got great numbers, and then it would still kind of drift to the right. They were saying it was pulling, but I think they just have a bad test drive loop because it was really just like a mild drift. It was worse when the crown of the road went to the right, and it kind of went straight when the crown was going to the left. So the next weekend, Don and I just drove up to his dad's place, test drove the car, checked out some stuff, went for another test drive, determined that we should probably pull the parking brake pretty good and hard while driving. And when we did that, we heard a pop, did it again, heard like another little pop, and then the car was fine. So those parking brakes, the cables weren't seated into the knuckle all the way. So I'm glad we figured that out and everything was good. And right about here is when I got a phone call that my wife wrecked the minivan and she rear-ended somebody. So I was pretty heated, needless to say. Luckily, she was okay and the kid wasn't in the car. But I'll have a video about the minivan being wrecked and fixing that here shortly. But this is it. We got everything tight, under load. That way none of the bushings are in a bind. And we're going to hear the first startup here. It's going to be fun. Oh, that's not bad at all.
Not bad at all. But I give it some gas. I think it's
That sounds good.
yeah.
It is rich.
Yeah.
Now let's open the door.
Put stuff together. It's just noisy for the sake of being noisy. Those J pipes work, don't they?
Yeah.